Sequencers are powerful tools, and with the right set of utilities, you can make your own. Now, before you think I don't need that, I already have a sequencer, hear me out, because this trick can be used to create melodic sequences, but also to derive alternate sequences from existing modules, and for an often underused trick, polymetric modulation sequences. If you'd like to support my videos, or you want to get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. You can also support my channel through affiliate links in the video description. But now, let's dive right in. Let's start with the core concept and expand the setup with more complex ideas along the way. If you take a mixer and send a high offset voltage, for example 5 volt, to one of the inputs, the mixer will pass on that voltage and you can use the level control to attenuate the signal. If you attenuate and add multiple inputs at the same time, the mixer will add those voltages to the output. But when you cycle a single high input voltage from one input to the next, you create a sequence you can set with the level controls. To create a cycling high voltage, you can use a sequencer that has a gate per step output, like the step 8 here. Only one of these steps is high at a time, and you can patch these 4 outputs directly to a mixer. Another option is using a sequential switch. This quad switch takes a single input signal and sends it to one of 4 active outputs. A clock signal cycles through the outputs. In a flowchart that looks like this. An offset voltage is used as the input for the switch, and the switch is advanced with a clock. The outputs of the switch go to the inputs of a mixer. If you like to make melodic sequences, it's best to send the mix to a quantizer and clock the quantizer with the master clock. In this video, I'll just show the patch points of a simple synth voice graphic because the focus is on patching the sequencer. This simple trick is a lot of fun for hands-on melodic sequences. Or to add modulation sequences to your voice. Once you have a basic sequencer going, you can experiment with things like time control. A simple example is messing with the input clock. Instead of advancing the switch directly, you can send the clock through a VCA and open the VCA with something like a square wave LFO. That will advance or hold the note progression. The LFO is not synced, but when you clock the quantizer or voice with the steady clock, it just repeats notes in sync even when the switch is not advancing. You can swap the LFO with a sample and hold for more random results, or with a clock divider if you like more predictable patterns. If the switch has a reset, you can use that for similar effects. Just send an unsynced LFO, random gate or clock division to the reset input to create longer sequences. Again, clock the quantizer directly. Here, a divide by 7 clock division is used. Here's the same setup with offset, switch and mixer. But this time a sequencer is used to drive the switch and sequence the voice. In this setup, the created sequence can be used to modulate something in the voice, like the filter or wave shape. Adding one of the tricks that messes with the timing, like an uneven clock division, will create nice polymetric modulation. This brings a lot of life to a voice. If you are using a sequencer as master clock and its gate per step outputs as inputs for the mixer, you can explore the possibilities of the sequencer. For example, an unsynced LFO to control playback direction, or use a long clock division on the reset. Other sequencers might have other options that are fun to explore, like step jumps, gate mutes and so on. In these graphics I just show 4 outputs and 4 inputs. But if your sequencer or switch and mixer has more or fewer inputs, you can use as many as you like. In the next demo, an 8-step sequencer is used, and gates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7 are used as inputs for a 6-channel mixer. Active steps that aren't patched will just result in bass notes, again adding longer variations to the sequence. Here's the basic setup with switch again. If you have other modules like logic, crossfaders or more switches, just experiment with placing them in the clock signal before the switch. For example, you can take a clock to drive a divider, send two fast divisions to a switch or crossfader, and then swap between the two divisions with a slow division, and so on. Just explore options and have fun. With a custom sequencer, it's easy to explore transposing and scaling a sequence. Here's the setup from the last chapter, with basic quad switch and a little twist to modulate the clock before the switch. To transpose the sequence, send the output of the first mixer to a second mixer, and then the input of the quantizer. Now you can use something like an offset voltage to add manual transposing to the sequence, which is great for performances. Or you can use something like an LFO for automated movement. Note that the voltage is added before the quantizer, so it shifts the notes up in key. Another option is sending the voltage mix through a VCA before going to the quantizer. This doesn't transpose but scales the sequence back all the way to just the root node when the VCA is closed. This gives excellent manual control. But of course, when you use a VCA, you can also automate the modulation again with something like an LFO, random voltage or clock division. You can experiment with creative modulation. For example, use a clock divider and a mix of slow divisions to scale the sequence with a VCA. This creates steady tempo sync changes to the sequence. Here's the same concept, but the divisions of the divider are sent to a mixer to transpose the sequence, creating a more pronounced effect. Also, a sequencer is used as a clock divider to create slow, uneven divisions. Instead of static gates, you can explore more dynamic inputs for your sequencer. Similar to the tricks used for transposing an entire sequence, you can manipulate single steps of the sequence. Here, the first switch output is sent to a mixer. Adding a subtle amount of LFO or random voltage to that mix will create subtle variations to that single step, each cycle of the sequence. Instead of a mixer, you can use a VCA to attenuate the signal passing through. And you can use things like clock dividers or other switches to create repeating synced patterns. For example, a single note that switches between two options every few bars. You can expand and experiment with these setups any way you like. Here, an LFO is used to modulate the VCA, controlling the level of the first step. The fourth switch output is not used at all and replaced with a looping envelope. When mixed in subtly, this adds a bit of waving motion to the entire patch. Because it's easy to hear, I mostly use melodic sequences in these demos. But remember, all these tricks can be used for modulation sequences as well. Here's the same concept as in the last patch, but driven by a sequencer controlling a synth voice. The mix out of the custom sequence is used to modulate the filter. And to create shifting patterns, a copy of the clock is sent to a divider and an uneven division is resetting the switch. And just in case, if step accuracy is not the most important, you can use multiple divisions of a clock divider producing gates as the inputs for the mixer. This doesn't create 4-step patterns as the divisions overlap, but it does create nice looping sequences, especially great for modulation. Here, the mix is used on a filter and wavefolder in a simple voice. If you have more mixers and switches, it's easy to extend the length of the sequence. Here's the basic setup again with clock, switch, offset and 4 outputs going to a quad mixer. To expand the sequence, a 3-input mixer is added, and the first 3 outputs of the switch are copied and sent to that mixer as well. The outputs of the mixers are sent to a 2-in, 1-out switch, and a clock divider set to a slow division is switching between the 2 sequences. Using a clock divider, you can experiment with the divisions to create sequence variations. You can push this concept further by sending the 4 outputs of a quad switch to the inputs of a 4-in, 4-out matrix mixer. Then take the outputs of the matrix mixer to another quad switch to switch between the 4 rows of the matrix mixer. Use the clock division to switch between the sets. With longer sequences, you can experiment with all the ideas shown before. You can add things to modulate the time, or for example change one of the inputs with a looping envelope to create a fluctuating step in each of the rows. That should be enough to get you started, but let me know in the comments if I missed a good idea. If you'd like to learn more, have a look here, and as always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.